What's up, YouTube? Card Games United, here with another Cardfight Vanguard standard deck profile. This time we got ourselves some Oracle Think Tank.
Ooh, Oracle Think Tank sucks.
Hey, Oracle Think Tank's good. Oracle Think Tank's good.
Before you go into the deck profile, in terms of this deck's place in the meta, where do you think it would be relative to the other decks that we have so
I
far?
think right now it can honestly make the argument that it's sitting on top of the meta right now. I think Kagero has a good matchup with it sometimes, just if you don't know how to handle the waterfall. And if you let Nova Grappler go off, they're gonna get you. But honestly, I haven't had many losses with this deck, and the ones I have had usually stem from things like my opponent miracle healing, or double healing, or me not getting any grade 3s and drawing all my triggers. And Andre is laughing because he knows he did all those things. Anyway. So, I honestly think if it's not the most powerful deck, it's definitely one of the most. Maybe tied with Kagero.
Seems like everyone just thinks Royals are at the bottom of the heap right now, but
Royals are kind of hard to place because things can either go very right or very wrong for them, right? Because they don't have anything that's just as it doesn't have as normal a strategy, essentially. It really wants you to have just been at 4. It doesn't know how it's going to put you there. But we'll talk about that when we do a Royals profile eventually.
Before you get into the profile, would you say that this deck is hard to pilot or easy to pilot? Or somewhere in between?
Somewhere in between, I guess. There's a lot of things that you just know right off the bat are going to work out well. There's a little bit of thought that has to go into riding, and when to be leaving the trigger on top, when to be trying to dig for other cards, things like that. But it's not too hard. This being V-Series, a lot of the effects are very straightforward, so we don't have anything as complicated as maybe we once had in Oracle Think Tank. So I probably rambled on. Yeah, deck profile.
Why is this starter over Lonzend Magus? Because the same thing.
Rabbit. That is all. So, grade 3 lineup. This will change, but I don't quite have enough Imperial Daughters to really run all the things I want to run. So for right now, I've got 3.
You have 5?
I only have 5. I'm trying to play her in both Standard and Premium. Because she's a really good card. Sometimes just being on her long-term isn't great, because the only thing she does long-term is that Act Soul Blast 1 gives something 6k, which is alright.
I've seen some Japanese lists run her at 3 and then just run Amy at 4 and the Deer at 2.
Yeah, I think
3 seems to actually be a good number for
I
her.
want to bump her up to 4 myself. I think that's better, because she can accelerate you to the Deer, and she gets the draw and all that. Fuels the soul a little bit. That 6k is very handy. It's a little better than Ami's. It is also a finisher, because when you ride it, you can get 15 in a crit on her. Really has a lot of positive aspects going for it, and the only sort of negative is that you're stuck on just her for 3 turns in a row.
It's kind of like Waterfall Syndrome.
It's kind of like Waterfall Syndrome. So, next up we have 3 copies of CEO Amaterasu, who I think I will bump down to 2 when I get another copy of Imperial Daughter.
A lot of people love her.
I like her. I don't love her. She's the thing you want to be on if you only see 1 grade 3 that game.
I don't think she's the ideal first ride in this deck. But then again, Imperial Daughter also has you a plus.
The problem is that they're the exact same thing at almost every point in the game. but second ride onwards she gets 15k and a crit, and that 6k distributed is actually a lot more useful than just her getting 5k, I found.
Yeah, she does make a useful regard, though.
Because the 6k scales infinitely better. It's more versatile. You can put it on the side rows if you know they have a PG. Again, she's probably like a little bit better as a... She's better if you're not going to be able to ride again next turn.
Yeah.
And she is somewhat useful as a rearguard, but the deck really, I think, wants her as your Vanguard most of the time. And counterblast 1, draw 1, scry 1. That's not bad. Yeah. Next up, we have the single dankest of memes. This... What can you say about a card? It's... perfection. So...
But if it was perfect, it'd be run as a 4.
Oh, shut up. So... what Xerneas here does is Soul Blast 2 grade 3 cards, so you either have to wait for your third ride or check a grade 3 with her, which is another reason I'm thinking about bumping her up to 4. If you can ride her twice in a row, that ups your likelihood at getting the grade 3. But then, what he does, after you Soul Blast those 2 grade 3s and discard a card, you check the top 7 cards of your deck, look for up to 2 critical triggers, put the rest of the cards shuffled at the bottom of the deck, and then put the 2 criticals on top and everything gets power plus 10. This thing is your finishing power in the deck.
Also works as a rearguard too. You don't even have to ride it.
Yeah, that's the great part about him.
But even if you have to ride it, this gives you a protect gift.
You drop him on rearguard. He does have the protect gift, so he's not a terrible ride. He does have to be the third ride, so that's usually Ami him if you're just not seeing the Imperial Daughter. So yeah, it's a super specific condition. Things have to go right to get into him, so he is a meme, but he is a very good meme because he does provide a lot of finishing power, and it's not that inconsistent with the way the deck is built.
Before we move on to the grade 2s, you ever think about running 9 grade 3s?
Nope.
Same here. Don't like the numbers, even though I can see a lot of grade 3s in the spots.
So, on to the grade 2s. We have
the best card in
4
premium.
Silent Toms. Possibly the best card in premium. I don't know. Blaster Blade. Give him a run for his money. Because you gotta be aggressive, and OTT is not. But he's definitely the slickest style grade 2 in the game.
I've seen some Japanese ones drop this down to 0, if anything.
It's possible. I just don't know what else you would run in this box.
At the locals I went to, every OTT deck was running Tom at least at 3 or 4.
So, if you don't know, what he does is when ridden or called to rearguard, counterblast 1, get 6k. Not bad. With an 8k booster, you can make 23, so it's a good column. That's a pretty decent effect. And then he can't be guarded by normal units, or they can't call normal units from their hand to guard when he attacks. Which is sometimes useful, is sometimes not that useful. That effect is really more of an issue in premium than anything, because that means with him and Ishikishima, it just stops all potential guards. So,
unless if you got some weird way of guarding, like Battle Siren Force and Upper Force, something like that. But
yeah, Felucia in Bermuda Triangle. Anything that can intercept and then have an effect. But for the most part, that's pretty much a lockdown. Generally, that effect doesn't come into play too much in a standard.
I noticed in standard that when I play against Silent Tom, he definitely, just his presence in the field definitely changes the way how you guard certain attacks.
It does. It makes it a little more awkward because you have to consider you have to leave the trigger in your hand for the Tom. So
and they put a critical trigger on there.
Sometimes it means that you have to drop more of your pieces than you want to get the Vanguard up to a 2 or 3 to pass.
Be any other grade 2s that would be better in Tom's spot in this deck? That aren't being run currently or are being run
I can imagine some in the future, potentially. but for right now,
I think he's a 4 staple.
he's fine at 4 probably. I could see myself maybe playing around with this spot a little bit, but the 23 swing's not bad, and just having that annoying little guard aspect it makes him
especially on deer turns.
Especially on deer turns. Next up, we have for Promise Daughter, probably in my opinion the best grade 2 in the deck right now.
Kagero can't cook her.
Kagero can't cook her, which is amazing. Even the Royal Paladin can't Blaster Blade her, so she just stays on the field. She gets that 6k just for having 4 cards, which is ridiculously easy. So she swings for 23, which is golden numbers. This is probably my MVP of the grade 2 lineup.
She can be dominated on premium.
She can be dominated and locked, but not retired. Although if you run up against premium Narukami, they can bind her.
Wait, really? They can get around that?
Yeah, actually, because the effect just says it can't be retired, not that it can't be targeted. So if it's something like Vanquisher that says choose a card, retire, and bind it, they choose her. The retire doesn't work, but it's do as much as you can, so they still bind her.
That's pretty cool.
Because it doesn't say bind from the drop, it just says bind. So, then some rulings for you. Next up, we have 3 copies of Goddess of Insight, Satora Hime. This is another grade 2 I'm a little less certain of long term, but what can I say? There just aren't that many grade 2s that I really want to run. I could see myself maybe...
It's like the grade 1 lineup for Novas.
I could see myself maybe changing some stuff out for like Yellow Witch Meme, mostly because she's named Meme. And I love me some memes. But yeah, she could be useful getting you the extra check sometimes. What this does is, on rear guard, when it attacks Vanguard, counterblast 1, draw a card, discard a card, it gets 6k, and then if your Vanguard is grade 3 or higher, you scry the top card.
Seems pretty useful, but it would have to be the first
It is fairly useful. It does help for hand fixing.
I think it is over that it has to be the first attack, because you obviously want the scry for your Vanguard check.
It doesn't have to be the first attack.
That's true. Well, if you want to get, like, the scry to see what you would drive check.
Oh,
But I guess you could also scry to see what you would damage check or something like that. So
the scry is kind of the least useful part of the effect. I mostly... because usually it's OTT, so you're usually using your scries and stuff to stack crits on top anyway, so you usually go Vanguard first. Sometimes you can look to try and get a heal trigger on top, stuff like that, but mostly what I use her for is early game hand fixing to try and get the right grade 3, things like that.
Yeah.
Also, again, that's 6k, magic numbers, everything in this deck swings for 23, it's just her and Tom require counterblast, and she doesn't, so... That's a good. So, moving on to the grade 1 lineup, we have our absolute staple card in Circle Magus.
This is a 4 of non-negotiable.
This is a 4 of non-negotiable because she's some of your only hard plussing in the deck, and she also helps for hand fixing.
She's your ride target, I noticed that.
She is your absolute ride target because when you ride on her, counterblast 1, draw a card is some of the only hard plussing in the deck right now, unfortunately.
This is standard in general, actually.
Well, no, because there's a lot of hard plussing in Royals. And also Kagero. But the point is, if you ride on top of her, you get a draw. If you have her on rear guard, she can stop you from clogging up your hand, or she can help you dig for the pieces you need. A lot of good in just this one card that's really deceptive in how useful it is. Next up, we have 4 copies of Farfalle Magus. When she's called to rear guard, it annoys me a little bit that you can't use her on Vanguard, because at that point you're already missing the Circle Magus, and you can't even give me the benefit of seeing if I can get a piece I need on top. Really? Bushy? Really? Anyway. So, when called to rear guard, scry the top card. It's just solid, good,
seeing
Yep.
what you want.
Looking for your pieces, looking for your triggers, always good. Has good synergy with Amaterasu. So for these next 6 cards, I couldn't really decide what I wanted to play, so I just decided a little bit of everything.
That baby is creepy.
So we got 2 baby, we got 2 fairy, and we got 2 chicken.
So when Kagura cooks a chicken, it becomes Kentucky Fried Chicken, right?
Absolutely.
So the baby is basically a resource recharger.
Yes, but he's not very good. The problem is, I want to have that full field to keep up the aggressive pressure, especially because this is a protect clan. I'm not going to be able to dig with my rear guards at your anything if you're playing a force clan. So I really need to keep things on board, or at least in the case of this, it does give power back, so there is something to be said for that. Sometimes though, the unflip can come in clutch. You can need to get that extra counterblast for like a Tom, or just so you have a play next turn, things like that. Generally, I don't find we have that much trouble with resource management, but it's good to have. It's good to have. The fairy, what she does is slip into soul, scry 1, and if you put it on bottom, give something 5k. So that's pretty efficient. Generally, I'd say I like Luckbird best, but just because of how heavy the soul blast cost is, I keep him at 2. This is another part of the deck where I could see something coming in the future that replaces one of these.
But for now, a little bit of everything.
But for now, they're okay like this. So, onto the trigger lineup, and to surprise no one to see 4 heals, 4 perfect guards.
Draw PGs these days seem to be the preferred PGs you want to be playing.
Yeah, I mean, I could clog up my grade 1 lineup, but all I'm gonna open up for that spot is more. Unfortunately, no, because we only got the 2 types of crits. So you max out at 8. So you would just open up the spot for generic draw triggers instead of the PG draw triggers, which at that point, why bother?
Unless if it was a budget build or something like that, I guess.
If it's like super budget, but then what are you running as a boss? Because all you've got is that thing that recycles a sentinel for a draw, and I don't know why you would want to play that thing unless you're like really running into a ton of Kagura. So 8 crits. I don't run any draw triggers because what are you gonna do with the draw triggers?
I think like on like Nova Grapplers, there seems to be not be a lot of variants in trigger lineup that you could be doing.
Yeah, because at least they got front triggers. The only thing the other clans got was 2 different styles of crit, 2 different styles of draw, one of which being the PG, and then a heal.
Yeah.
So I'm a little disappointed that Bushi played it that way instead
every clan besides Novus is running 8 draw.
Instead of letting us play around a little bit more. Because I totally would go up to like 10 crit and swap out maybe the fairy for 2 grade 1 PGs.
But it just wasn't getting it. It'll at least take another booster for that to happen.
Yeah, it'll take another booster set for that to happen. I'm very interested to see what Bushi does with Oracles in the future, because they're such a strong deck, but there's so many spots that could still be improved. So I think it's in the good spot of being strong, but still having ways to grow, which makes me hopeful for both the future and the present.
With Destructive Roar coming out, where do you think this deck would place?
It's hard to say because I don't really. Because again, I think out of the first 4, it could honestly make the argument that it's in the top spot. I don't know what people are looking at to be the strongest out of the Destructive Roar.
Seems barely on Spike Brothers.
I have seen Spike Brothers making some waves. And I think it's a strong deck, but I don't know. First off, I think that Spike Brothers is going to have a hard time fighting this, just because we PG so efficiently that you're never going to get like that big column to matter, and you're never going to get that Siegfried to hit. I don't know, Spike Brothers does have a lot of good resources, does have a lot of consistent pressure, so it may make the argument at being at least tied with this, just because of how it's going to handle other clans, but I think this is going to have an advantage in the matchup.
Everyone's assuming that Aquaforce seems to be the best clan coming out of Asia Circuit, so do you think they'll be able to handle those clans that are coming out of Asia Circuit, especially
Aquaforce? I do worry about a little bit, and I suppose I should say the same thing for Tachikaze as well, just because being a Protect clan, you are at a little bit of a natural disadvantage against XL. I would mention the Nova Grappler matchup, but the issue is that their resource management is just so poor right now that you can usually just live past them anyway.
Especially just how easy they are to play around Perfect Riser.
If they do end up healing some, they can be very difficult to deal with, but if the triggers play in your favor, you should win that, no problem. I guess Tachikaze could end up being a problem because they do have some good resource management cards. Like Skitero and, what is it, Beam Triceratops, something like that. I forget his name. Oh, I'm absolutely going to be playing them. I always play Tachikazes, and I always will play Tachikazes because they're dinosaurs with frickin' laser beams. What else could he ask for in a clan?
It just seems like for now, though, with the support they got in Q4, it seems like OTT will be around for a while.
I think so.
I think unless Aquaforce gets some amazing reveals, which
Aquaforce does worry me a little bit because, again, you do have issues with the XL matchup, and Aquaforce does look like it's going to be the XL deck to beat.
The better version of Nova Grappler, which is weird because Novas are always the better version of Aquaforce.
Well, yes and no. In late G era, definitely. In mid G era, Aquaforce was on top. When they first came out, it was a little bit back and forth. Vanguard history being Vanguard history. Yeah, so honestly, I think that's the thing to watch out for that may unthrone this deck, but for now, just
all the way through August, this deck should still be the best deck in the meta.
The only other thing is that Kagero having Draconic Waterfall is an issue, but if you know how to play around that deck, you can usually work the win in.
Has anyone even had a good Kagero matchup? Maybe Royals?
I wouldn't say anyone has an inherently good matchup. Royals probably have the best, but Kagero has a decent counter to this, so if they're playing smarter than you are, they can... Usually in that matchup it comes down to A, luck, B, who's counterplaying better, C, how many waterfalls they see, D, how many Imperial Daughter you see. So there are a lot of factors that could sway that match one way or the other. Kagero does just get an inherent advantage over Nova Grappler. So Kagero has a good argument just meta-wise, but I think in terms of raw quality of cards, this is probably better. The one thing, though, being Waterfall as such an X factor, the problem is that he's a little bit inconsistent. So that's why I like this deck the best. You can make arguments as to one or the other being better.
As we do more standard matchups, it seems like you can get a better sample size to at least determine what's being good. For now, we only really got the 1/7 matches we have in camera, so for now, OTT reigns supreme.
OTT reigns supreme. I never thought I'd hear those words again.
Best undefeated deck on the channel right now. This is the profile.
Alright. Ooh, I forgot. We haven't done this for a while. Your lucky number is... 1! Good night, people.